When I walked into my empty house on Christmas morning and found my children gone, I knew my ex-husband had crossed a line he'd regret forever. What I did next didn't just ruin his holiday, it destroyed his entire life. Let me tell you how one Christmas morning turned into his worst nightmare. My name is Abigail, and I'm about to tell you how my ex-husband's Christmas surprise became his biggest mistake. 3 years ago, I was living what most people would consider the perfect life in Beverly Hills. Designer clothes filled my walk-in closet. My Tesla sat in the driveway of our $4 million mansion, and my 2 children, Emma and Dylan, aged 8 and 10, attended the most prestigious private school in California. I had built my luxury skincare empire from nothing, starting in my garage and growing it into a company worth $45 million. My products were sold in high-end department stores across the country, and celebrities couldn't get enough of my anti-aging serums. I was featured on Forbes' 30 Under 30 list and had graced the covers of numerous business magazines. Life was everything I had worked for. But behind the glittering facade, my marriage to Marcus was crumbling. He was a successful investment banker who earned 7 figures annually, but he had grown bitter about my success. While I was building my empire, he was making snide comments at dinner parties about how I was never home and how the children barely knew their mother. The truth was, Marcus couldn't handle that I had surpassed his income by triple digits. Our divorce was finalized 6 months before that devastating Christmas morning. The custody agreement was crystal clear. We would alternate holidays, and this particular Christmas was mine. I had spent weeks planning the perfect day for Emma and Dylan. The tree in our living room was surrounded by carefully wrapped presents from Tiffany & Company, the latest gaming systems and designer clothes they had been wanting. I had hired a private chef to prepare their favorite Christmas brunch, and we were supposed to spend the day at my parents' estate in Malibu. But when I woke up at 7 a.m. on Christmas morning, expecting to hear the excited squeals of my children discovering their presents, I was met with complete silence. I patted down the marble staircase in my silk pajamas, calling their names, but received no response. Their beds were empty, made perfectly, as if they had never been slept in. My heart began racing as I searched every room of our 6-bedroom house. That's when I found the note on the kitchen counter, written in Marcus's distinctive handwriting. "The kids are with me for Christmas. They wanted to be with their real family. Don't bother calling. We're somewhere you'll never find us. Merry Christmas, Abigail." I stared at those words, my hands trembling with rage. He had violated our custody agreement and essentially kidnapped my children on the most important day of the year. I immediately called his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried his parents, his brother, even his secretary. Nobody knew where he was, or at least they claimed they didn't. The beautiful Christmas morning I had planned dissolved into a nightmare of panic and fury. I called my lawyer, but being Christmas Day, I could only leave urgent voicemails. The police were sympathetic, but explained that without evidence of immediate danger, custody disputes were civil matters that courts would handle after the holidays. I was trapped in my own home, surrounded by unopened presents and the echo of my children's absent laughter. As I sat in my living room, staring at the Christmas tree through tears of rage, I made a decision that would change everything. Marcus thought he could manipulate me, use my children as weapons, and get away with it because I was just a woman running a little beauty business. He was about to learn exactly how powerful this woman could be when pushed too far. The first thing I did was hire the best private investigator money could buy. Within hours, I had a team of 3 former FBI agents tracking Marcus's every move. They monitored his credit cards, his phone records, and even satellite images of properties he might be using. By December 26th, they had located him at his cousin's ski lodge in Aspen, posting pictures on social media of their perfect family Christmas with my children. But finding them was only the beginning. While Marcus was playing happy family with stolen time, I was orchestrating something that would make him wish he had never crossed me. You see, my ex-husband had a secret that he thought nobody knew about. For the past 2 years, he had been embezzling money from his investment firm, slowly siphoning funds from elderly clients' retirement accounts into offshore accounts he controlled. I had discovered his illegal activities months before our divorce, but had kept the information as insurance, hoping I would never need to use it. Marcus was stealing from people who trusted him with their life savings, people in their 70s and 80s who couldn't afford to lose a single dollar. The evidence was all there in financial records I had copied from his home office, forged documents, falsified statements, and a paper trail leading directly to accounts in the Cayman Islands. During our marriage, Marcus had been careless about his computer security around me. He used the same password for everything, including his work accounts, and I had memorized it years ago when he asked me to check his email while he was traveling. Now, that carelessness was about to destroy him. On December 27th, while he was still hiding in Aspen with my children, I accessed his work email and downloaded years' worth of evidence showing his embezzlement scheme. Transaction records, client communications, and bank statements painted a clear picture of systematic theft totaling over $3 million. But I wasn't just going to expose him. I was going to make sure the timing would cause maximum damage to every aspect of his life. I contacted Sarah Mitchell, an investigative journalist I had met at a charity gala who specialized in financial crimes. She had been looking for a big story to launch her career at a major news network, and I was about to hand her the scoop of a lifetime. I arranged to meet her at an exclusive restaurant in Manhattan, where I laid out the entire case with documentation that would make any prosecutor's mouth water. "This is massive," Sarah said, flipping through the evidence I had compiled. "But why bring this to me instead of going straight to the authorities?" I smiled, swirling my wine glass. "Because I want to control exactly how and when this story breaks. My ex-husband stole my children for Christmas. Now I'm going to steal his life, piece by piece, starting with his reputation." Sarah agreed to hold the story until I gave her the green light. Meanwhile, I was working on phase 2 of my revenge plan. I contacted the Securities and Exchange Commission and the FBI's white-collar crime division, providing them with copies of all the evidence I had gathered. I also reached out to a class action attorney who specialized in investment fraud, knowing that Marcus's victims would need representation for the civil suits that would follow. But the crown jewel of my revenge plan involved Marcus's greatest pride, his membership at the prestigious Riverside Country Club, where he conducted most of his business and social networking. This wasn't just any country club. It was where Fortune 500 CEOs played golf, where multi-million-dollar deals were made over cocktails, and where Marcus had built his entire professional reputation. I had maintained friendships with several influential members' wives, and through careful conversations over spa appointments and charity luncheons, I learned that the club was planning their annual New Year's Eve gala, the most important social event of the year. Marcus would undoubtedly attend, especially since he was trying to maintain appearances while hiding his crimes. This would be the perfect stage for his public humiliation. On December 30th, Marcus finally returned my children, probably thinking he had taught me a lesson about respecting his authority. Emma and Dylan ran into my arms, and I held them tight, kissing their faces and telling them how much I had missed them. They seemed confused about why they had been taken away so suddenly, and I could see the emotional damage Marcus's impulsive decision had already caused. "Mommy, why didn't Daddy tell us we were leaving?" Emma asked, her big brown eyes filled with confusion. "We didn't get to say goodbye or take our special blankets." My heart broke for my children, but it also fueled my determination to make sure Marcus faced consequences for his selfishness. "Sometimes adults make mistakes, sweetheart," I told her, smoothing her hair. "But you're home now, and that's what matters." Inside, I was counting down the hours until Marcus's world would implode. New Year's Eve arrived with crystal-clear skies and the promise of new beginnings. I dressed carefully for the country club gala in a stunning red Valentino gown that hugged my curves perfectly, my hair styled in an elegant updo, and my makeup flawless. I wanted to look absolutely radiant when Marcus's life fell apart in front of everyone who mattered in his professional world. The ballroom was magnificent, decorated with thousands of white roses and gold accents, filled with the city's elite enjoying champagne and celebrating the approaching new year. I spotted Marcus immediately, looking handsome in his custom tuxedo, laughing and networking as if he didn't have a care in the world. He was completely unaware that federal agents were already preparing arrest warrants based on the evidence I had provided. At exactly 11:30 p.m., 30 minutes before midnight, Sarah Mitchell's story went live on the news network's website and social media channels. The headline read, "Prominent investment banker accused of stealing millions from elderly clients' retirement funds." Within minutes, the story was being shared across social platforms, and phones throughout the ballroom began buzzing with notifications. I watched from across the room as Marcus pulled out his phone and saw his face transform from confidence to pure horror. The color drained from his cheeks as he read the article detailing his crimes with precision and documentation. Around him, other party guests were pulling out their phones, reading the same story, and beginning to point in his direction. Marcus Sterling, a senior partner at Whitman and Associates Investment Group, is accused of systematically embezzling over $3 million from clients' retirement accounts over a 2-year period, Sarah had written. Federal investigators have obtained detailed financial records showing a pattern of fraudulent transactions and falsified client statements. The article included quotes from the SEC confirming their investigation and statements from elderly victims who had discovered their life savings had been stolen. But the most damaging part was the sidebar detailing Marcus's luxury lifestyle, including photos of his expensive cars, his gambling habits in Las Vegas, and his recent purchase of a yacht worth $800,000, all funded by stolen money. As the news spread through the ballroom, I watched Marcus become increasingly isolated. Business associates who had been laughing with him minutes earlier were now backing away, their wives whispering behind their hands and shooting disgusted looks in his direction. The president of the country club approached Marcus with a stern expression, undoubtedly to discuss the immediate suspension of his membership. But I wasn't finished yet. At 11:45 p.m., 15 minutes before the ball drop, FBI agents entered the ballroom in their dark suits, their badges clearly visible. The room fell silent as they approached Marcus, who was standing alone near the bar, his face ashen and his hands shaking. "Marcus Sterling, you're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and securities fraud," the lead agent announced loud enough for half the ballroom to hear. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." The handcuffs clicked into place as 200 of the city's most powerful people watched in stunned silence. Marcus's eyes found mine across the room, and I could see the moment he realized exactly who had orchestrated his downfall. I raised my champagne glass in a subtle toast, my smile never wavering, as he was led away in handcuffs just as the countdown to midnight began. The aftermath was swift and devastating. By January 2nd, Marcus had been fired from his investment firm, which immediately froze all his accounts and began cooperating with federal investigators to minimize their own liability. His assets were seized, including his luxury apartment, his cars, and the yacht he had bought with stolen money. The country club revoked his membership permanently, and his professional licenses were suspended pending the outcome of his criminal trial. But the personal consequences were even more severe. Once the full scope of his crimes became public, Marcus became a pariah in our social circles. Former friends refused to take his calls, and his own family distanced themselves from the scandal. His elderly victims, some of whom had lost their entire life savings, filed a massive class action lawsuit that would ensure he would never recover financially, even if he avoided prison. The custody battle that followed was the shortest in family court history. Marcus's legal troubles made him an unfit parent in the eyes of the judge, and I was awarded full custody of Emma and Dylan with minimal visitation rights for him. The children, who had been confused and hurt by their father's erratic behavior, seemed relieved to have stability back in their lives. 3 months after that Christmas morning, Marcus was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison and ordered to pay full restitution to his victims. The judge called his crimes a betrayal of the most vulnerable members of our society and noted that his pattern of deception and manipulation extended into his personal relationships as well. Meanwhile, my business continued to thrive. The publicity from my ex-husband's scandal, rather than damaging my reputation, actually increased sales as customers admired my strength in exposing his crimes. I was interviewed by several magazines about standing up to corruption, and my story inspired other women to speak out against powerful men who had wronged them. But here's the twist that Marcus never saw coming, and neither will you. Remember how I said I discovered Marcus's embezzlement scheme months before our divorce? What I didn't mention was that I had been working with federal investigators for over a year before that Christmas morning. The FBI had approached me when they began investigating suspicious transactions at Marcus's firm, and I had agreed to help them gather evidence while protecting my children from the scandal. Every document I provided to the journalist, every piece of evidence that led to his arrest, I had been collecting it all under the supervision of federal agents. The Christmas kidnapping wasn't the catalyst for my revenge. It was simply the perfect timing for a plan that had been in motion for months. Marcus handed me the moral justification to destroy him completely by stealing Christmas with my children. The private investigators I hired? They were actually FBI agents I was already working with. The financial records I hacked from his computer? I had legal authority to access them as part of the federal investigation. Even the journalist was working with law enforcement to ensure the story would support the prosecution's case. Marcus thought he was teaching me a lesson about power and control by taking my children on Christmas morning. Instead, he had walked directly into a trap that had been waiting for him to spring at himself. His own arrogance and cruelty gave me the perfect moment to watch his entire world crumble, knowing that every second of his downfall was completely justified. Today, I'm remarried to a wonderful man who treats my children as his own and respects the empire I built from nothing. Emma and Dylan are thriving in their schools, and they rarely ask about their father anymore. We spend our holidays surrounded by people who genuinely love us, creating the kind of family memories that can never be stolen or manipulated. As for Marcus, he's serving his sentence in federal prison, where I'm told he spends most of his time in the library, probably planning appeals that will never succeed. His victims received full restitution from the government's recovery program, and the elderly clients he stole from can finally sleep peacefully knowing justice was served. Sometimes people ask me if I feel guilty about destroying the father of my children. My answer is always the same. I didn't destroy Marcus. His own choices did that. I simply made sure those choices had consequences. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time, and when they try to use your children as weapons, make sure they never get the chance to hurt anyone else's family again. The lesson here isn't about revenge, it's about justice. When powerful people think they can manipulate and control others without consequences, it becomes everyone's responsibility to prove them wrong. Marcus learned that there are some lines you should never cross, and some women you should never underestimate. And that, my friends, is how one stolen Christmas morning became the best gift I ever gave myself. The gift of watching a predator finally face justice for his crimes. The shocking revelation that Abigail had been working with the FBI for over a year before the Christmas incident, and that Marcus's kidnapping of the children was actually the perfect timing for a federal investigation that was already underway. His punishment wasn't revenge. It was justice served with perfect timing.